in today?
Yeah, of course.
Today, we're going to have a mezcal paloma.
Okay.
Do you remember the guys from Breaking Bad?
Oh, of course.
They started a mezcal company.
All right.
Dos Hombres. That kind of cool?
Yeah.
So we did a little bit of mezcal, a little bit of grapefruit, some lime, a little squirt.
Simple syrup.
Simple syrup.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. Ready to do this?
Yeah. Oh, you're already here. Oh, my God. Oh, God. How's it going? Here we are. Welcome to Toilet Talks. We are coming at you in the bathroom at Tailored Hair in San Diego, California. We chose to host this podcast in the bathroom because real shit happens in here. I'm Lizzie, and this is my good friend and co-host, Sam. Sam, what are we talking about today?
Today, it's a deep topic.
What?
Chemistry.
Oh.
So I'm not talking about what you do in high school with the beakers and the test tube. I'm talking about relationship chemistry. So between whether it's platonic or, a partner, we're talking about chemistry.
Chemistry.
Yep.
All right, this is going to get kind of cool.
Oh, it's going to be really, really good.
Okay. Are you ready? Let's light the candle. Glad. And, you ready for this? Let's flush some shit out.
Let's do it.
Dive in. What are you thinking?
All right, right out of the gate, chemistry. So this is what happens when you see somebody and you have that moment where the sparks fly. May not be like the full-on campfire flame, but something's there. And this could happen between friends, or it could full-on happen with someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Chemistry, right? So we're going to be talking through today whether that's, in your brain, what happens when it starts to fade, your past, how you're bringing your emotional baggage, or anything from, previous relationships, how that actually either adds or subtracts to chemistry. We're just going to dive into chemistry in general.
So what is it? Like, what is it? Like, let's start, where did it even come from?
Sure. So chemistry to me, that is that gut feeling you can barely explain that there is an emotional or physical connection to another person. It's something you cannot ignore. It's where you literally feel connected to somebody from a almost, biological, physical level. Not just you think this person is interesting, you think this person is cool, but you feel truly connected to this person at a different level. Mm-hmm. What would you describe chemistry as?
I almost feel like there's no words for it. It's like when you know. Yeah. I think it's very hard to explain it. I think that in life, it doesn't happen often. I think for people, it's lucky if you have it happen one or two times.
Sure.
When it comes to whether it's love or finding, your soul bud. So, I don't know. I think it's unspoken, but it's something that people don't probably, dive in enough with. You're like, we have such good chemistry. And then you just, move on. I think today it was really exciting to, actually take the concept of chemistry and look at it at all angles. Because I think that chemistry, that instinct that you have, it can be great, but it also can be, I think, sometimes confusing.
Sure.
So I think it's hard to explain, but hopefully today we can dive a little bit more into it.
I think it makes sense to kind of go through it in stages, because when I think chemistry, it actually reminds me of when we first met, and we had this chemistry that, we connected immediately. Like we had known each other for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think that platonic chemistry is, like you said, sometimes overlooked, but really, really important. You can sometimes have friends or even coworkers that you vibe with, if you want to call it that way, but you just have this kind of connection to that, I want to spend more time with this person in whatever environment that I can.
Yeah.
And for, you and I met on this retreat. We were out in the middle of the desert, and we knew each other for like 2 minutes before we were like, okay, no, this
Yeah.
is something, and I want to dig in and see where this goes.
It almost just feels like familiar. Like, I think that when people think of chemistry, it's immediately like, it's like this like passionate love or whatever. But I think more than anything, the healthy kind of chemistry is at first you're like, this feels familiar. It's safe. That's kind of interesting. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I think one of those moments of life where you don't, I guess I'm kind of lucky because I have a barber shop.
Right.
And so I've had an interesting relationship with chemistry because for almost 12 years now, we've had guys coming in for haircuts. And whether it's me cutting their hair or meeting them, you get to play with chemistry in a whole different world.
Sure.
Like, when you're in high school or college or whatever, you have this moment of like, oh, I had chemistry. Old school Lizzie in Indiana, we had nothing else to do than like, we should get it on. Well, that was bad. Yeah. So that's like your initial, even if you think about just like the beginning stages of it, it's confusing. So you just end up acting on it like in a kind of like almost like more animalistic way, like as far as thinking about the context of being attracted to someone. But obviously, being a professional business owner, like you can't just be like, I have great chemistry. Like, should we go to the bathroom and like do it? We would have lasted a day.
Yeah.
So then I think the most the coolest part of all of this for me and such a really neat lesson is you can have initial chemistry with people. And after meeting, thousands of men over the years, it's not often. Like, it's very, very rare still to have that moment where you have someone in your chair that you're like, this feels familiar. And again, I think it's interesting. This is another thing we talk about later, but like the concept of how people are on Tinder and Hinge and things like that. Like, chemistry is so confusing in that respect. Like old school days, you would just meet someone and you could feel it. And anyway, so I think with going back to the barbershop stuff, I've had the opportunity to have that chemistry, but let it take time and time and time, and it becomes the most beautiful friendship.
Right.
Like once you take it past the like initial attraction stage, it just becomes friendship.
Yeah.
Which is neat because I think a lot of times, especially the younger generations, anybody like in high school, people in Indiana right now, just take a minute. Like it's like your initial urge to do it. And then it sucks because all these people, growing up that you'd have that urge, you'd get it on, and then you never talk to them again. Like it's almost like it's just like 2 seconds or two, I don't know. Sorry. We're like 2 minutes. We'll say it's 2 minutes. But
that's fair.
And then you don't have the next layer. So instead of it being that surface, when you take it and just really, really almost like respect the chemistry versus just acting on it,
Right.
I think it's magical. It just is so much past like a physical thing.
No, I get that. And it's, when you can see past that spark, right? The sparks happen constantly. And there are songs written about it. There are lyrics written about it that, you have that spark and you think that there's something more. But sometimes it takes some bellowing. Is that even a fucking term?
What is bellowing?
Yeah, like I'm thinking.
Have you bellowed lately?
I'm thinking the bellows from like an actual fireplace where it's
I've never even used the term bellowing.
Bellowing.
In
this case, I think that it actually is fitting. Sometimes that spark, that initial chemistry. And chemistry is such a great term for it because you can have that initial reaction, but if you don't foster that, if you don't actually like dig in and either add more to it or take away in some instances, then you're just at that initial spark versus actually building it into something that's a long-term reaction. And I think that's a really cool term for it. It's just the chemistry.
I never knew I was going to be using the word bellowing. Bellow. But there's something to be said also for like, there's plenty of time where you have that like initial chemistry and the tension of not just immediately getting it on or doing whatever. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what that is, like when you finally do, and then you're like, okay, like that was cool. Like I don't know. I wonder what it is when two people can be so connected, and then the minute they do something about it, like why is it you think that they end up going in different directions? I think that's where it sometimes becomes like, sometimes I think emotional chemistry versus physical chemistry can almost be more powerful.
Sure. No, I like that. That's a good thread to pull on, because that, physical chemistry, that initial reaction can be very powerful. But there's so many aspects that go into why you're initiating that, why you've felt that spark, I read this really interesting article about those types of initial instincts being, part of being diagnosed with ADHD, which was fascinating to me.
What do you mean?
Well, so you could be it related to it actually in long-term relationships, and how, if someone was to stray, it may not just be, a bad mark on their relationship or some issue with the relationship, but actually ADHD, where they're actually literally sparked by this kind of shiny object, if you will, which is it's something I want to dig deeper into, because I think it is a fascinating subject, and I was recently introduced to it, so I don't have a ton of information on it, but it did spark that conversation where it's, what is that little piece of, a reaction really that can be something you either react to or you can build on, and I even from, we obviously are coming at this in two different perspectives, the male and the female. From a female perspective, what are some of those indicators or discernments that, move it from either a platonic chemistry reaction to something more on the physical or relationship side of
I think it totally depends on your moment of life. It's like when you're in high school, that question would be like, I didn't have a lot to do in high school, so I just had a lot of fun. But I ended up becoming really good. Like, it's almost like there's this tension, and then you like hook up with someone, and then for me, I would just actually become good friends with them afterwards. Like, it was like this, like, all right, let's just like get that over with, and then now we're friends. Where like when you're married, you can't do that anymore.
Not so much.
Yeah,
no.
which is great. It's totally fine. I don't know. So I guess it depends on the time of life. I think that, now where I'm at, like where I can't just, do it and then move on and be best friends. I think to me, it creates this deeper emotional relationship, which is just as special. I think over time, as you get older and you've had a lot of life experiences, it's fun. But then I think to me, it's more of the emotional side. So my perspective would just be, I'm more attracted to the emotional chemistry now than the physical.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. So if we're talking about, the impulse reaction versus in the more reactionary, chemistry, if you will, that you want to actually foster and dig into, are there certain indicators or triggers or some sort of, there's a moment or there's a reaction where this is not just a one-time thing. This is I want to dig into that. Like for you specifically, are there any of those types of things that you can kind of, identify as, okay, if this happens, I know that that's something that I want to dig into long term?
I think that's a good question. I think that it's two things. I think it's almost like not necessarily this like logical processing. As you get older, or for me at least, I just want to be around the people that give me more energy. Sure. Like life is so busy. I have a child and a business. Life is busy. Yeah. And so to me, I think I'm more pulled by people that add life than old school days when you let's say you had a crush on someone, but you had to like exert all of this effort. I would just not be attracted to those people anymore. It's right. Like you want just this like natural moment. So I guess it's just more so leaning into the people that you don't feel like you have to try with. Yeah.
Yeah, almost a natural chemistry reaction versus something they actually have to force.
Yeah.
You know?
I also think it's different. I know we're having like a little sip of alcohol, but over time, like I go, in our periods, whether it's trying to be more healthy or working out or whatever, and you cut out alcohol, you really quickly, when you cut out alcohol or anything mind altering thing, you just see things differently. Sure. Like when you're in high school or college and you having lots of drinks, it's like this false sense of chemistry.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's it too. It can trick you into thinking that things are better than they are.
Right.
Where when you're completely sober at 2 p.m. during the day, it's just different.
Yeah, I almost equated to an actual scientific chemistry experiment, right? If you have some sort of contaminant, alcohol, you may get a different reaction than if you had a pure environment.
Like orange juice.
Like orange juice.
There should be like the third date. It's like the first few dates, you like have a few glasses of wine and your life is good. And the third date, it's like you just like have to pour orange juice at like 10 a.m. and actually see if you like the person. It's almost like finding out if there's true chemistry there sooner than later.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so easy to keep kind of pushing it.
Right.
But again, it goes back to like the authentic chemistry and what that even is.
So you mentioned we're getting older, and we are. We're going to have a whole topic on that, coming up in a future episode on aging. But talking specifically about chemistry, there are a lot of experiences, chemical reactions, if you will, from previous relationships or flings or high school or anything like that. Could you pinpoint or choose any specific things that you've learned from previous chemical reaction or chemistry in your past that you are, I don't know, keeping in the back of your mind when you feel certain things nowadays?
Totally. So there's so many layers to it. Because sometimes when you have that initial, not like even outside of a relationship, like it could be a work relationship or whatever, someone you just meet as a friend, occasionally you have to like analyze, like if you have that initial light
spark,
or what is it, like it can also be like what you're missing in yourself. Does that make sense? It's almost like you get super excited, someone's like, from a really wealthy family or something like that. You're like, oh, that's so cool. Like they have all these options and travel and all this stuff, but it's like, it's such a surface layer chemistry of like, it's almost like what you're wanting versus just knowing it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it really does. So are there particular indicators to you that mean that it's, and kind of back to almost a previous question, that are indicators that this is actually something more than that initial spark? Or have you picked up on anything almost, I don't want to go into a checklist, but are there things that you're looking for in chemistry, in a relationship that that it's something more than a one time or an initial thing? And it could be they're both platonic or romantic, where you're like, okay, they've checked a couple of these boxes or the reaction is going in this particular way where I know this is going to be more long term.
No. No, I don't know. No.
Still figuring that part out. And I get that too. And I almost prefer that, if it allows for, more open-ended experiences and being able to, not limit yourself to, a very specific view. I'm glad I mentioned checklist because it's the exact opposite of what I would think that I would want, trying to
it's
identify.
Like the opposite.
Yeah, you almost want it to be more of a natural reaction. So for me, for what I look for in chemistry, and thankfully I've had multiple aspects of this and moments, if you will. And earlier in life, it was definitely the attraction piece, right? I'd see somebody and I'd be like, I identify that person as attractive, and therefore I almost manifest chemistry. Mm-hmm. And it's worked out okay in certain situations, and in the past didn't lead to long-term relationships. Some of those initial chemistry, like, when I got married the second time, there was a tremendous amount of chemistry there. And those aspects were, I don't know, touched on these pieces I was missing from early relationships where, I felt heard, I felt seen. And those are, I think, real legitimate components of chemistry, but it turned out to be platonic. I mean, we got divorced, but we realized we were just better friends than we were in an actual relationship, kind of leaning towards that platonic side. And then
there's so much power in the experience of it all.
100%.
Like
100%.
Yeah, at first, especially when you're in high school and college years, it's purely physical.
Right.
And even nowadays, like with Hinge and Tinder, whatever people are on nowadays, it's probably something else. It's physical still.
Right.
And so it's great. And then, you probably make a date. I would literally be so bad at this. I will never. Like, but you go and you make the date and then you end up, as attractive as they are, you're like, there's just so much more to it. So as you get older, and I think when you hear about people that get married a second time or whatever it is, like they know themselves in a different way. I think, and I've definitely had friends that they met in high school or college and they're still together and they're great. But I think it's so easy to have that initial spark when you're younger and life is probably a little less stressful.
Right.
And then as you get older, I think it goes back to like I don't know, like how to keep that going.
Yeah. So like in my current relationship, from an attractive perspective, I mean, obviously she's absolutely gorgeous. She's beautiful. But all of my previous, plus and minus columns as far as what my type was, what I thought initiated chemistry, if you will, she didn't check them all. It was the subtle things, the little things about like spending time with, my oldest child, without me even there. There were these little aspects that sparked that chemistry that I wasn't accounting for. I mean, my current relationship, especially at the very beginning, took me completely by surprise.
Yeah.
Which is almost like mixing two components that you don't think are going to explode and react in a super positive way, and all of a sudden be pleasantly surprised by what's happening. I think that does come from the maturity aspect. I'm noticing things, I'm realizing, I'm looking for things that I didn't look for early on in life.
What would you tell yourself at 20? Like, I think it's kind of interesting to think about. Yeah, like if you were your 20-year-old Sam sitting here, what would you tell him about chemistry?
To be patient. Some chemical reactions take a little bit of time. Knowing, really the reactions that you're looking for could be very beneficial. But also allowing that freedom to experiment and see what happens, I think is really, really, really powerful. And I would give myself some opportunities to just experience it and see what happens when you mix a couple of things together, versus trying to be very, very specific about, okay, this and this must equal this. Yeah. Right?
Well, at least how I grew up, it was like, you were in high school and you're like, what college are you going to go to? And you're like, I'm going to go to Indiana University and then I'm going to major in marketing or whatever, communications. Right. And then you go, and then the next question is like, so what are you going to do next? Like, and so then you're like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to like meet someone, and then you get married. And then you are like, oh, I'm supposed to have kids now. Okay, I'll do that. Like, right. It's almost like the world expectations and chemistry are like two total opposite ends. Sure. Like expectations and chemistry are basically like, what is it? If chemistry was like a boner, expectations would kill it. Expectation gives it blue balls. When's the last time you heard of that term?
Oh goodness!
But it's like, yeah, like but then as you get older, even if you have the best chemistry on the planet, and stress is lower, whatever, then then you end up getting married and having kids and having a business, and then it's like, but you should still go on hot dates, and you're like, right. I'm tired, I don't want to. But so then I think this is a good segue into like and I think this is why affairs happen.
Sure.
It's almost like there's a really good book called The State of Affairs by Esther Perel.
Okay.
And she says it's like that there's so much around why an affair happens. And a lot of times it's like you lose yourself within it. So, the spark happens, you get married, you have kids, you stay together, and then you're like, it's almost like you don't have an affair because you don't love the person you're with. You have it to like find yourself again and to find that spark within yourself. Like I think that chemistry, if you think about it, can also be within yourself. And when you're losing that spark within yourself, you're literally trying to strike whatever you can to feel alive again. And not that it's okay at all.
Right.
Like I think that they said like the biggest difference between animals and humans is that we have a choice. Like we understand that we have a choice.
Yeah.
But I think we can almost like the default sometimes is still an animalistic tendency of going towards the things that give us light, and sometimes confusing the two things.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And that is a great segue into like if you see that chemistry is almost waning, like what types of things can you do to spark that again, to cause another reaction?
The biggest advice I've ever given people is in a marriage or relationship, it's like you have to still have your lines intertwined. Like the minute the lines go parallel, like completely parallel, it's really hard to get it back together. Like as much love and chemistry you can start with, and it's just at the beginning so intertwined, and you almost don't know when one thing stops and begins.
Right.
And then, things start happening and you do kind of like get in your own lanes. Especially if like a spouse travels or things like that. Like you have to. Or like in a lot of parents I'm sure can relate, like you just get in just like your blinders are on.
Right.
Anyway, so I guess, I don't know. I think it's hard. So I think the biggest thing I would say to keep the chemistry going is to not let the lines go completely parallel. And whatever you do, try to find ways to like lean in a second. The one thing I have a hard time with, and I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but like I've had multiple times different friends or whatever, they're saying they like schedule getting it on.
Right.
Which I guess is better than nothing.
Sure.
But I just, in my heart, am like, that sounds horrible. So you go from like high school, college, just like loving life.
Right.
Making horrible decisions in the best way possible. And then all of a sudden you like find yourself 10 years later, like, so on Tuesdays.
Right.
I give hand jobs.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? So I guess that'd be the other thing is like, don't go totally parallel and somehow keep and spontaneity is not the word because everyone uses it and it's overplayed. It's like, keep the tension in there a little bit. I don't know, like a healthy
I get
tension.
where you're going, right? Because, if you plan it all of a sudden there, and from a male perspective, that a little bit of chase is super, super valuable. And that's part of the chemistry aspect. When you know that it's not a given, when you know that it's not guaranteed, that's super attractive. It just really is. And I don't think that scheduling,
but maybe it's okay. They're probably getting it on more than other people that aren't scheduling it.
Certainly possible.
But like, I don't know. And then maybe when you're in it, like maybe it's like on Tuesdays, you're like, oh shit, we gotta eat Taco Tuesday, and then it's time to get it on again.
Right.
Like maybe it's fun, like 5 minutes in. But I don't know. It just feels
I don't know
weird.
either. That's not something that we've pursued, but I
But again, it's like it happens. Like all the
and again, better than not.
It's way better than not.
Yeah.
But
we've to help keep the chemistry alive, if you will. There's this really fun. It's called the Adventure Challenge, and it's actually it's really cool. And they have like maybe a more PG related, or rated version, and then they have like a couples version, which is really
It's
fun.
called the Adventure Club.
The Adventure Challenge. And it's a book of preset activities. And literally the actual activity itself is a scratch off. So you don't know what you're doing until you've committed to it. And the only rule is basically that once you scratch it off, you got to do it. So for just like the couples dating one,
maybe that's a better thing to do on a scheduled Tuesday. At least
exactly.
do a
So it's like a
scratch-off on
combo,
Tuesday.
right?
That's
so
a great idea.
A little bit of, curious, a little bit of mystery, but you still at least that, okay, on Tuesday nights we're doing the Adventure Challenge, but you may not know what it is. I think that's at least a fun way to kind of keep that spark alive, because it does wane. I mean, chemistry in general, relationships in general, ebb and flow. That 7-year itch is a real fucking thing, and it's terrifying. But as long as you can call it out and realize what's happening, you have a chance, right? And you can talk that through. Communication's always a huge thing. You literally, if you have those communication fundamentals with your partner, you can talk it through and be like.
So, but what if you don't? Like, what if you don't have the communication?
Well,
in your,
I mean, I'm 3 divorces in, or 2 divorces in, and on the third marriage. So I certainly understand what happens when you don't set that communication, cadence or establish the communication rhythm early on, because I definitely see where that can go south very, very quickly.
So what would be your advice to someone who is in a relationship or marriage that they have stopped communicating?
Yeah, that's...
Like, what if they're like almost totally parallel? Like, what would you tell them? To do the scratch off?
To do the scratch off, yeah.
Just give me your address and I'll send you the Adventure Club Challenge.
No, unfortunately, I think so many people are going through that, and that really is a tough problem to solve. The first step for me would be identifying that is where you're at, because then you can start establishing and identifying the tools that may be available to get you back intertwined. I think oftentimes people will ignore the fact that they are currently parallel with their partner, and then it'll run a little bit too far.
Why do you think that someone is more comfortable telling a stranger that, or a good friend, like, I'm parallel with my significant other, than them telling their significant other?
Well, there could be several instances or indicators or pieces to that answer, right? So, I mean, right from the very beginning, the chemistry could have actually been more on the physical or platonic side, and it may not have been long-term chemistry. If it was long-term chemistry, maybe they didn't actually put forth the effort to continue that, the balance, if you will, and the intention. Probably the intention is a big part of it, and allowing themselves to focus on other things. The boundaries could not have been set where either the person or their partner set boundaries where these are my needs, and set that communication cadence and a rhythm early on, so that's something that you can rely on and fall back to. I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice. Actually, anytime I go to a wedding and I provide some advice, it's first off, make sure that you choose as a couple if the toilet paper is going to go, mullet or reverse, because it's just a funny, joke on, whether it goes behind or in front. That's the first part, and then to set that actual communication expectation right up from the very beginning. You're having too much fun with that.
Sorry. No, but I hear you're saying, like, get on a little bit of the same page.
It really, really, really is important, and I think really the fundamentals of why relationships either wane or fail completely is communication. So it's not that the chemistry can't be rekindled or can't be fired back up, if you will. I just think people aren't putting the right effort into it from a communication perspective.
Well, like you're saying, it's like it takes it takes energy to have intention.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's easy to just let things kind of fall as they are.
Right.
But it does, I think, having both parties truly like can continue to show up.
Yeah.
Which again, I think it'd be interesting to see the couples that had the like highest level of spark. Like, were those the ones that stayed?
Right.
I think it's like a lot of times, in my history at least, you have this great chemistry, and then it, like, as quick as it came, it went.
Sure.
And then the people that are like the kind of like the slow, is it called bellowing? The ones that are bellowed, like you're like it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, like there's this trust that also invokes the chemistry,
right,
which is kind of cool. So.
Yeah, that would actually be a really interesting topic to dive into a little bit deeper, in its own episode, because I think the longevity of a relationship could be a full-on episode. There's so much to it, and there's so many aspects to it. I actually really like that. I think that we should dive into that. But specifically for the chemistry part, yeah, that initial flame, I mean, and I keep going back to the science of things, from your traditional chemistry aspect, in high school and stuff. But those quick flames, the biggest flames, oftentimes will burn out the fastest, right? It's those ones that have that continued reaction, where the two aspects are continually interacting and reacting to each other, that lasts the longest. And I think that actually is a really good parallel or metaphor for longer term relationships. That's interesting. So what would you dive in? So I talked a little bit about some of the indicators that to me were, hey, there is some chemistry here if we foster that a little bit. We talked a little bit about if it wanes, and how to try to get that back. Are there any dark sides to chemistry where, maybe there's chemistry somewhere that there maybe shouldn't be? We talked a little bit about the infidelity piece. How would you deal with all of a sudden you have this chemical reaction, this chemistry reaction with somebody that maybe it's outside of a committed relationship?
I had a client like years ago that said, he's been married for like 20 plus years, and he said something along the lines of, the friends of his that had either had affairs or divorces, they, maybe remarried or had another relationship, and they were repeating the same things.
Sure.
So I think it's almost like you keep repeating the same problem until you figure it out. Like, it's how they say, like, you end up are attracted to, like, if your dad was super quiet and, like, you never knew what he was thinking, you end up, like, with someone that's quiet and you don't know what he's thinking. And you're, like, in your own relationship trying to solve it still, if that makes sense.
No,
so it's like,
that.
I think when you, or vice versa, right? Like, it's like, like, so, yeah, anyways. Well, I'll just say, it's like, so, like, Joe is, like, very, like, organized engineer, and he married an unbelievably unorganized person. I have cups all over the house. I'm sure it drives him insane. And I'm like, is he at one point like, I am going to figure out how to make this lady more organized? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, it's not going to happen. So I think that like initial like almost like the initial attraction, was it the whole opposites attract thing? You attract because you're like, there's so much admiration on how someone is more extroverted than you are, or more creative, or for me it's like, God, he's so organized, or whatever. And then again, life happens, a few years go down the road, and those same things that attracted you are confusing and maybe even annoying. Like, he's probably like, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it also probably changes too, like when you have the opposites attract at the beginning of a relationship and you're, getting it on, having the best time. It's like distracting you from the fact that this bitch is going to keep cups all over the house. You know what I mean? And like, and forget to pay bills on time because I just forget. And then all of a sudden, I don't know. So I think it's almost like this thing of when you meet someone, it's not good or bad, but I think this feeling of fixing, I think it's almost like a few red flags would be like you're attracted to someone and it's like you feel like you want to fix something or help
Sure.
them. Like your initial instinct is, I love this person, I'm going to help them.
Right.
Like it's a great thing, but instinctually you're like, where is that feeling coming from?
Yeah.
I recently heard this thing of like, you know, if you're ever frustrated or something, it's like, how old did you feel at that time?
Oh, that's
So it's like
interesting.
when you're having that initial moment, or like if for some reason someone is married and they have a moment of attraction to someone that's not their spouse, it's
Yeah.
like, how old are you feeling?
Is that
at
that
time?
16-year-old you,
Yeah.
or is it the actual 38,
Exactly. Are you
40-year-old you?
actually attracted to that person, or are you attracted to them because they're seeing you and it's making you remember the times that you were
Right.
20 years old and had nothing to worry
Oh,
about?
that's interesting.
And that kind of, yeah. So it's almost like, I don't know how you explain it. It's not necessarily opposites. Like it's
No.
almost like,
But it is good to know. So, right, like if you truly are in a committed relationship, because chemical reactions like that happen all the time, and being able to kind of move that into the platonic side just for the sake of a relationship and call that out for what it is, that's a great tool to have, in your tool belt, to be like, actually, yeah, this is actually just 18-year-old me. This person is attractive. They seemingly think I'm attractive. But you know what? This is not a long-term thing. I can call that
No.
out. This
Yeah.
is just one of those sparks, and it will fade. Having that ability to discern that, I think, is super, super valuable. And I love that aspect. Like, is this 18-year-old me, or is this 65-year-old me where, I could see myself with this person for 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
And is that different
which that's
than where
kind
I'm
of
at?
interesting to think about. Recently, I was, this lady was taking me through this meditation, and it was like such a cool one. It's called parts work,
Okay.
where basically you take different things that happen in life. So when I was working with her, it was like 8th grade Lizzie,
Right.
and an actual event that happened, and we were working through it. And you forget that over time, you like leave 8th grade Lizzie behind.
Yeah.
Or 10-year-old Lizzie or 22-year-old Lizzie. And those people are still within you.
Mm-hmm.
And at points they're like trying to get out or trying to be heard.
Sure. That's
So
still
it's-
part of you.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like, when you're a 40-something-year-old guy that, has been married for X amount of years and then has some beautiful younger person attracted to them, it literally is like the 22-year-old, like, I'm still in here.
Right.
She's beautiful. Come on. Like,
Yeah.
go. So it's almost like talking to that one and being like, I hear you. I agree. But like, here we're at. It's like almost like understanding the different versions of you and which that's kind of like another alternate reality.
Yeah.
It's like almost like quantum chemistry of like, what version of you is attracted to that person?
Yeah.
Like, is it like for me, like if I were attracted to someone, it's like, is this the 35-year-old Lizzie that's attracted to that person?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the older version that's like, I'm still in there? And if that's the case, it's like, well, what can I do other than that will make that person feel seen?
Right.
So I don't know. So I think the chemistry part, and I don't know if it's red flags, it's like understanding the psychology behind where it's coming from versus it just being this like animalistic,
Gut reaction.
I like you.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Or so it's like beyond that.
Yeah, so if we were talking about like tools, tips, hints for those that are I don't know, identifying or in a moment of chemistry, maybe they are in a long-term relationship, maybe they're looking for a long-term relationship, or maybe they are the 22-year-old Lizzie and that just wants to fan that flame, that initial spark, if you will, chemical reaction and just enjoy. What? Because, hey, that is a whole life experience that I would not give back.
I
have
literally-
thoroughly enjoyed that.
I did too.
Yeah.
I look back on all the stuff that I did before marriage and kids and everything, and I'm like, and when you're in those modes, you're like, I fucked that up.
Yeah.
Oh no. And then you're like looking back, I'm like, you should have done more.
Yeah.
You should have way more. It's incredible. So I think that's it. It's like, it's so easy again in life. Kind of going back to earlier, it's so easy to be like, I go here and then I go to college and then I get married and then I have kids and then what? And then what?
Yeah.
It's like this it's like on the earlier stage in chemistry, it's like being responsible with it, but experimenting with it a little bit in a responsible way. Would you say that?
No,
I don't regret anything that I did.
Nope.
I had insane times.
I'm
There's so
insane.
many. Well, okay, not like you have to get into it, but like, what's the craziest example of chemistry you had growing up?
Oh goodness. So I had, we'll just call it chemistry with someone who I had an initial chemistry reaction to early in life and then met them again later in life.
Okay.
And then it was like, oh, that's right. That was really special. And I would love to see where this goes. They were actually a camp counselor that I had when I was in like late junior high, early high school type thing. Met them later in life, way later in life. And I was like, oh, I remember that. And decided to pursue it. And it was the wildest 2 years of my life. It was...
Wait, how old were you?
Late 20s, I think.
A lot of good stuff happened then, too.
It's a lot of good stuff.
I know.
There's a lot of good stuff. But most importantly, where I'm at in life now, it taught me the things to look out for. Those what two chemicals may come together and not necessarily be a good thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, like, the best of times were also
100%.
100%.
They definitely informed what not to do, what two things not to mix together, because maybe that's not the best for the sake of an environment, because you mix these two things together and the whole house blows up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really
like it's like exciting, and then you're like, oh, too far.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Now the house is on fire. That wasn't great. So it certainly helps on the long term now. And there are other, I think really, really importantly, there are other aspects or positive aspects where it was like, okay, maybe just a little bit of this and a little bit of that in the previous, experiences.
So it's like taking all of it.
Right. And but all of a sudden I went too much. She went too much. I went too much. And then, okay.
I will always like to say, I always fuck up. I don't fuck down. So it's like I fuck up a lot, but then I continue to fuck up and keep moving on. But my thing was interesting. So my very first boyfriend, I was a freshman in high school, and he was like senior varsity soccer player. And I remember I was at a homecoming date with another guy, and we all went to this guy's house after the dance. And I remember being like, the guy was super nice, but I was like, we didn't have the chemistry.
Sure.
But I noticed this other person, and I like almost like a sniper. I was like, that's the one. That's the one. And so I ended up. It doesn't matter, but we ended up like becoming boyfriend girlfriend a few weeks later because we had a great time.
Yeah.
And his dad had a dentist. He was a dentist. This is so bad but it kind of effed up everything from this point forward, because the very first experiences I had with like being like, chemistry, I like this person. Now we're dating. Now we're literally in his dentist's office. So it's like everything from that point forward, I was like, well, this isn't the dentist's office. But there was this one night, and again, this is fine. We had never like gone all the way.
Sure.
And I was like, so-and-so, I think it's time. Yeah. And so we went to a Speedway gas station, and I got an Oreo flavored condom.
Okay.
And we were like, okay, it's game time. So we went to the dentist's office. Like, and anybody in the world would be like, this is the most, I was like, this is the way I'm going to do it. This is it. And so then it was literally like a movie was about to happen, and then the alarms go off. I'm pretty sure it might have been his dad. His dad was like, okay, let's have it. Oh, no, don't even think about doing that. So we didn't do it that time. And then, but again, this tension was brewing and brewing. So like another week goes by and it was like, I think it's time.
Now's
Let's
the time.
actually do it.
Yeah.
So then we went, but this is like back in the good old days when you're in high school and you're like, you think like even if the, whatever comes out of the ding dong, if it's like a foot away, you're like, I'm pregnant. So we ended up, after church one day, we went back to his house and we were like, okay, it is time. Let's just do it. And then we didn't have an Oreo flavored condom.
Course, yeah.
So we ended up, I was like, 1 minute, so-and-so. I won't disclose his name.
Of course.
Although I'm sure he would appreciate this
Yeah.
now too, because we're all old and reminiscing.
Yeah.
So then I went to the kitchen and I got saran wrap. And I was like, this is going to work. Because we didn't have anything. So I went back. I go, okay, here we go. And so I started to rip it off,
Lizzie.
like one, and I put it on top. And I was like, but what if it's not enough? So then we kept breaking.
Oh my God.
And I think they
Lizzie.
were like 4. And then I was like, oh, I can't even see it anymore. So then we took that off. And then we ended up going to the garage. And there was one of those, the dentist gloves. And then I did that. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right anymore. But we never ended up doing it. Like he ended up going up to college and it was wild. But it was
Lizzie,
weird.
this is the best story. I'm so happy you shared this.
I don't know. I know. I shouldn't have.
No, this is perfect. I love it so
I
much.
haven't really talked to him really since then. But
That's okay.
what was crazy though is that he goes off to college, and he was such a wonderful human.
Yeah.
Like he's one of those humans that like he's just a really wonderful human, and he would have made an incredible husband. But as soon as he went off to college, I went into my sophomore year, and then I just went wild. And I probably should have whatever. I probably should have tried it with like the glove. I don't know. Instead, it was literally I lost it to like a surfer from Carlsbad.
This
on
is
spring
just,
break.
I love how
Miles.
this has progressed. Miles. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, Miles.
This is wonderful.
Yeah. But
So,
sorry.
no, this is great. So,
But again, it was like those. It was innocence, though. Like when you're
was, yeah.
when you're like chemistry again. Chemistry breeds with like raw innocence.
Yeah.
And the minute you try to put it's like why like you start to date someone or you get married and all of a sudden they're like, why didn't you come home at this time? Why did you? You're like, oh, like it just starts to like wane that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no clue. I literally have no tools though at this current moment of life. So that's what I would love to have more of.
That's all right. I got you.
Yeah.
All right. So it starts with communication, right? So if you see it wane,
So get the scratches.
get the scratchers. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Adventure
challenge.
Challenge. Scratches.
So promote #adventure challenge. Actually, super super cool.
So you
Highly
just scratch
recommend.
them off.
Scratch them
What's
off.
the craziest one you've gotten so far?
So there was a making pizzas for the other person blindfolded. That was a really fun PG one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they we don't have to go into the adult ones, but there's some.
I just told you I almost lost my virginity to saran wrap ding dong.
So there was an adult one where you're trying to play Jenga while the other person is pleasuring you, and you're trying to.
That's awesome! Wait a minute.
Highly recommend
This is
the Adventure Challenge.
amazing.
It is phenomenal. It
Okay.
really is very, very cool. So, communication, right? Make sure that
Wait.
you're open.
And then you know what? Off of that, like
Mm.
little segue is as far as like trying to continue it on
Mm-hmm.
to continue to bellow it, playfulness.
Playfulness.
Because that's it. It's like communicating,
Mm-hmm.
but like just go back to playing with each other a little
silly
bit.
is okay.
Yeah.
I cannot
We get
tell you
so
how many
serious.
times that we've just been caught in laughter in the most intimate times, and it
Jenga.
is so much better.
I'm never gonna look at a Jenga set the same.
It's just an amazing experience. Yeah. So being silly, highly recommended to keep that chemistry alive. Boundaries are also very, very important.
What does that mean though?
So boundaries as far as so setting relationship boundaries, like understanding that chemistry is going to happen. So if you know that and respect that
Yeah.
chemistry is going to happen.
Like,
If you-
outside of
the relationship, make sure that you've set some boundaries with your partner on, hey, like I get it. I would be naive to think that you won't think there are other people that are attractive. Okay, I get that, but understanding that the chemistry that we have in our relationship is priority, and setting those boundaries on limits, and the whole, you can look at a menu but don't order, don't taste, that kind of shit, right? I think that's really, really important. So boundaries are important, and then overall just understanding that things that ebb and flow, relationships ebb and flow, so it will come back as long as you're putting forth the effort and being intentional with it.
And then I think there's also a really beautiful part of this too, is like at points, if for some reason you've done everything you can and you just truly have the platonic type of love, it's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah. Like, I think it's like there's so much guilt that it's almost like the weirdest advice I'd have also for someone that's married, that's like trying to figure out stuff, is like, just stop acting like you're married, which is the weirdest thing. Not like not in a weird way, like go meet someone else, but like just stop treating each other like you're married. Like, just treat each other like friends. That would probably be the last part of it too. Is like, communicate, play, and when all else fails, just like be friends.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about just being good people.
Yeah.
That can carry a lot of weight. It's just being a good person and being friendly to somebody else.
We did a lot of stuff today.
We did do a lot of stuff today.
That I don't even know where we all went with that, but we will chop it up in the editing. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for tuning in to our third podcast, Chemistry. I love you.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I love it. It's always a good time. So,
thank you to our sponsors. Tailored Hair, San Diego, California. An amazing barbershop. The best you've ever had. Literally, you deserve at least 1 hour for yourself. Especially, like, going back to all this, just even tying it in with chemistry. Like, if you don't feel groovy, you're not going to probably get your groove on anytime soon.
Oh, I love that.
And if you do, it won't be, like, totally amazing. So the more groovy you feel on the inside and the outside, the better everything will be.
Dig it. And then obviously, Secure Smart Office. That's my company. So all your cybersecurity and IT service need for small and medium-sized businesses, we got you covered with Secure Smart Office. It just works. Capital I, capital T.
We also have decided that we're doing these, like this one and the next episode here, but we are absolutely on the 5th episode going to someone's bathroom. So we're on the hunt. We have a few people in mind. But yeah, if you have someone, please message us and we will come and we'll travel to
Put it in the
bathroom.
comments. You know, it's the whole master bathroom series.
Master bathroom. We want to go to someone's amazing master bathroom and have
keep the conversation going.
Cheers. Yeah.
All right.
See you next time.
Cheers.